Hello and welcome to the Forge for May 2026. My name is Phil Hull. I am the Divisional Director of Mission and Spiritual Development for the Indiana Division. We are nearly halfway through the year of looking at what it means to be a man of God. For the second half of this year, we move the focus away from ourselves and towards how we can allow God to use us to help develop other men of God through discipleship. When you think of the word faithfulness, do you have someone who comes to mind that seems to embody that ideal? Someone who can always be counted on, someone who is consistent, someone who always loves and serves the way that God desires us to. I can think of a number of people I've known throughout the years, but one of the first that comes to mind is Ruth Stoll, a faithful soldier of the Royal Oak, Michigan Corps and a longtime Eastern Michigan / Great Lakes Division employee. Ruth is in her 90s now, but for decades she has been the definition of faithfulness to many people. She has worked in the plan giving department for decades and is still going, even if it's at a bit of a slower speed. She's also a faithful youth music leader, and I was proud to serve on a music camp faculty with her while she was in her 80s. In fact, one of my favorite camp moments of all time was watching Ruth participate in their music camp's March of Wetness while she was in her 80s. And if you don't know what a March of Wetness is, look it up. It's hilarious. Now, I'm sure many of us can think of someone like that who you've known over the years that exemplifies the characteristic of faithfulness. Hopefully, you have many examples, and I sincerely hope that others can say the same about you. Faithfulness is a central attribute of God's character. We know that He can be trusted, that He keeps His promises, and that His faithfulness lasts through all generations. Deuteronomy 7:9 says, "Understand therefore that the Lord your God is indeed God. He is the faithful God who keeps his covenant for 1,000 generations and lavishes his unfailing love on those who love him and obey his commands." This is a huge part of the gospel because in a world that's always changing, it is such a relief to know that God never does. There are so many passages in Scripture about faithfulness. It's hard to pick just one or even pick just a few. It's something that's woven through all of Scripture from beginning to end. The challenge for us is to make sure that we are doing our part to reflect and demonstrate that faithfulness in the way we live. Proverbs 26 in the Amplified Bible says, "Many a man proclaims his own loyalty and goodness, but who can find a faithful and trustworthy man?" We often want to claim for ourselves that we are living this out in our lives, but it's often harder than it seems. One of Jesus' most well-known parables is the parable of the talents found in Matthew 25. It's a long passage, and we're not going to read through the entire story right now, but I would encourage you to read the whole passage when you move into the discussion portion. In this chapter, Jesus is telling parables about what the kingdom of heaven is like. In this story, he tells of a man who is leaving to go on a journey, and he entrusts portions of his property to 3 of his servants before he leaves. One received 5 talents, one received 2 talents, and the third received 1 talent. For reference, a talent is worth about 20 years' wages for an average laborer. So even 1 talent was a vast sum of money. Jesus tells us that the talents were distributed according to each servant's abilities, which becomes clear pretty quickly. The first 2 servants take what they have been given and each doubles what they have been given. But the third takes his talent and buries it in the ground and does nothing with it. Then a long time later, the master comes home to see what each has done with what they were given. Let's pick up the story in Matthew 25, verse 20. The man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, Master, you gave me 5 talents. See, I have earned 5 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy. The man with 2 talents approached. He said, Master, you gave me 2 talents. See, I have earned 2 more talents. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share in your master's joy. The man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, Master, I know you. You're a harsh man, reaping where you haven't sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. His master replied to him, You evil, lazy servant. You knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered. Then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have received my money back with interest when I returned. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw out this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What we see are 2 people who were entrusted with much, and they used what they had been given to great effect. The master saw what they had done and lauded their faithful service. But the third squandered his opportunity and hid the money out of fear. And in the end, it didn't save him from his master's judgment. It only made it worse. Now you may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with me? And that's a fair question, but I think this parable is a good example of how we should approach this idea of reflecting God's faithfulness. God has given us the gift of salvation and a new life. He has entrusted to us the message of the gospel, which we are called not just to preach, but to live out every day. The question we have to face is, what are we going to do with everything God has given to us? Are we going to be faithful and trustworthy? Are we going to use the things that God has given us to serve Him faithfully and make a difference in the world and in the lives of others? Are we the kind of men that God can use to grow His kingdom? When we look at the examples in this parable, 2 took what they were given and made the most of what they had. They were faithful in a few things and in turn were given charge of more things. But the one servant wasted the opportunity and was not faithful. Instead of being trusted with more, he lost what he was given and was cast out. We have talked about the important areas of our life as a man of God already this year, and we've still got many more areas to cover. If we're going to reflect God's faithfulness, it's demonstrated in being a disciple, in our character, in our decisions, and in our attitudes. When we show to the world and to God that we can live out the gospel faithfully, He will take that service and give us new and greater opportunities that we may never have dreamed of. Men of God, let's strive to hear those words. Well done, good and faithful servant.